Paris is a city of vibrant contrasts. Most likely, everything you've heard about it is true. It is a city of many facets, capable of being both enchanting and intimidating, and you will see why. Paris boasts architecture with tall columns and ornate bas-reliefs. It epitomizes a bohemian lifestyle with theaters and cabarets, and it is steeped in history, filled with mystical sights, underground scenes, and the enigmas of past centuries. Here, every building seems like a royal palace. It is astonishing to think that all of this was once considered ugly and tastelessly pompous. This was about 150 years ago. Paris used to be a city resembling a typical medieval town, with labyrinthine, dirty alleys and dead ends. The local authorities decided to bring order to the capital and completely rebuilt Old Paris. Narrow medieval streets were replaced with wide boulevards, and rows of palace-like buildings were constructed where picturesque ruins once stood. Parisians were horrified by the result. They called the builders vandals who had destroyed the unique charm of the capital. But 100 years later, Paris came to be regarded as the most beautiful city in the world. Parisian architecture has become the city's hallmark. In Paris, you can find hotels to suit any taste. However, to truly experience the unique spirit of this city, you need to stay in an atmospheric Parisian apartment, complete with a terrace or French balcony, and, if you're lucky, a view of the Eiffel Tower. Imagine high ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows, decor with paintings in massive frames, elegant furniture and bookshelves, and, of course, a small terrace where you can enjoy a breakfast of croissants and coffee. There is even a distinct trend in interior design known as the aesthetics of Parisian apartments. Personally, I would put the experience of living in such an apartment at the top of the list of things to do when visiting Paris. Though it can be quite expensive, renting such an apartment starts at $150 per night. For those considering buying an apartment in Paris, prices begin at $10,000 per square meter or $950 per square foot. These high prices are due to the prohibition on new construction in the city center, coupled with the high demand for living there. Such an apartment can be a worthwhile investment. Give this video a like if you've already imagined which apartment you'd buy if you had $1 million. How about the most famous symbol of Paris? While it's delightful to admire the Eiffel Tower from a balcony, you can't truly experience Paris without seeing it up close. Named after its creator, Gustave Eiffel, the tower was constructed on the Champ de Mars in Paris in 1889 for the 1889 World's Fair and to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the French Revolution. Initially serving as an entrance arch for the fair, the tower was intended as a temporary structure, but eventually became a symbol of Paris and France. The Eiffel Tower originally stood at 300.65 meters, 984 feet. After antennas were added, the Iron Lady grew to 324 meters. It held the title of the world's tallest structure from its completion until 1930, when it was surpassed by the Chrysler Building in New York City. Its height made it ideal for housing meteorological equipment, scientific laboratories for studying electricity and gravity, telephone communication equipment and radio stations. Eiffel used such innovative construction techniques that the tabloid press predicted he would end up in a psychiatric hospital. For instance, cranes moving along the future elevator rails sped up construction and helped avoid accidents. Initially, the tower sparked numerous protests among the public, including prominent cultural figures. During its construction, the city received thousands of petitions demanding the project be stopped. Among the opponents were writer Gilles de Maupassant and composer Charles Gounod. Despite his disdain for the tower, Maupassant became a regular at its restaurants, claiming it was the only place in Paris where the tower wasn't visible. The tower was supposed to be dismantled after 20 years, but its popularity with tourists led it to pay for itself in just 2 years, securing its place as a permanent fixture. During World War II, when Paris was occupied by the German army, the French deliberately disabled the tower's elevators. As a result, Hitler, during his triumphant visit, could not ascend the tower. Throughout the occupation, the German forces never managed to repair the elevators, preventing them from raising their flag atop the tower. The Eiffel Tower has 3 levels. The first level, formed by its 4 pillars, houses a restaurant and an observation deck. The second level offers a similar setup, but also contains oil reservoirs needed for the elevators. At the very top, there's Eiffel's apartment, complete with items he used during his time there. Today, the Eiffel Tower is particularly remarkable for its nighttime lights, which give it a unique elegance and luxury. Notably, the tower's nighttime illumination is protected by copyright, meaning that photos or videos of the sparkling tower cannot be used for commercial purposes. During the era of Paris's architectural and industrial boom, the city also experienced tremendous cultural growth, characterized by a free spirit that laid the foundation for modern popular culture. It all began when Emperor Napoleon III banned musicians from performing in public spaces. This led chanson singers to find new havens in café concerts or café cabarets. Cabaret was born in Paris in 1881 with the opening of Le Chat Noir. Poets and musicians performed on stage, and revolutionaries read their manifestos. Alcohol flowed freely, inspiring artists, writers, playwrights, and thinkers to create new and unprecedented works. France, weary of revolutionary upheavals and government pressure, eagerly embraced freedom with open arms. Over time, women with vibrant acts and costumes, quite different from what the bohemian audience was accustomed to, began appearing on the cabaret stage. The next significant establishment was the Moulin Rouge, which gathered the most renowned intellectuals of the time under its red windmill. For the first time in European history, Moulin Rouge showcased nude beauties dancing the can-can. The free-spirited atmosphere, mixed with the subtle sense of women's perfume and debauchery, captivated the imaginations of Émile Zola, Henri de Toulouse-Lautrec, Oscar Wilde, Pablo Picasso, and many others. It was a truly bohemian place, frequented even by notable personalities. Such establishments became so popular that they eventually opened in the Netherlands, Germany, and then worldwide. The most famous cabarets in Paris are Moulin Rouge, Crazy Horse, and Lido. Watching a show will cost between 90 and 295 euros. Unlike Moulin Rouge and Crazy Horse, Lido offers a more theatrical show, featuring magicians, ice dancers, and complex dance performances. Tickets for such a show will cost around 130 euros. There are specific requirements for dancers. They must have dance training, be at least 168 centimeter tall, be under 40 years old, have a certain body type, and have a small natural breasts. Every week, the dancers are weighed, and if a dancer has gained even 1 kilogram, she is suspended from performances for 2 weeks until she gets back in shape. Dancers earn 95 euros per performance. including taxes. While these establishments are not typically considered family-friendly, their programs have become more toned down compared to their early days. Subscribe so you don't miss my upcoming episodes featuring captivating modern and historical reviews. In Paris, you can often encounter famous individuals, not just in cabarets, but even while strolling down the street. One guaranteed place to visit a celebrity is the Père Lachaise Cemetery, unofficially known as the City of the Dead. Père Lachaise is not just a cemetery, but also a tranquil park, perfect for leisurely, reflective walks and a notable Parisian landmark. Thousands of people from around the world come to pay their respects to beloved artists, writers, and musicians. Additionally, it's the largest open-air museum of funerary sculpture. The cemetery spans 48 hectares and contains over 1 million graves. Here are just a few of the famous individuals who rest there: Frédéric Chopin, Honoré de Balzac, Edith Piaf, Molière, Oscar Wilde, and Jim Morrison. Oscar Wilde's grave features a massive monument of a winged sphinx adorned with countless kisses. According to legend, kissing the monument helps one find their soulmate. Cemetery staff had to install a glass barrier around the grave, so now admirers kiss the glass. However, this doesn't stop them. They also leave notes wishing for happiness all over the tomb. Jim Morrison was the lead singer of The Doors. Fans from all over the world visit his grave. Morrison is considered one of the most charismatic musicians in rock history. Various informal groups gather at Morrison's grave. A fence had to be installed around it to protect the neighboring graves. In the early 2000s, the cemetery administration considered denying the extension of Morrison's grave plot, but due to public pressure, they left it as is. One grave at Père Lachaise holds a unique secret. It belongs to Victor Noir. Victor Noir, a famous French journalist from the late 19th century, was shot at the age of 22. This grave attracts tourists for a particular reason. When Victor was brought to the morgue, his male organ unexpectedly became erect. Since then, there has been a belief that rubbing his statue in a certain spot can enhance male virility, and women struggling to conceive may become pregnant. At one point, authorities fenced off the grave to stop this indecency, but after protests from Parisians, the fence was removed. As you can see from the wear marks, many people have tried to find their happiness at this monument. Now, let's see where these notable figures spent their joyful days. Some visited as guests, while others performed there. Let's take a look at the Palais Garnier. The Palais Garnier was built at the request of Emperor Napoleon III during the major reconstruction of Paris. Although it is built in the Baroque style, the architect Garnier jokingly called it the Napoleon III style. Indeed, one of Napoleon III's principles was that there should not be a single unadorned space. The building had such an impact on French culture that it has been featured in many films, most notably The Phantom of the Opera. The interior of the Palais Garnier is exquisite, with its grand staircase, foyer, and auditorium. Both the grand foyer and the grand staircase are made of marble and heavily decorated with ornaments and sculptures. Many niches in the grand foyer feature statues of nymphs and Greek gods. The auditorium is where the shows take place, with a 6,350 kilograms, 14,000-pound chandelier made of bronze and glass hanging from the center of the ceiling. The ceiling of the auditorium was painted by Marc Chagall himself. The Palais Garnier also houses the Library Museum of the Paris Opera, managed by the National Library of France and included in tours of the Palais Garnier. Here, you can see atmospheric interiors, exhibits, and even models of theatrical sets from the most famous productions. Another iconic place is the theater foyer, where audience members stroll during intermission. It is very similar to the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles, though with fewer mirrors. Even if you are not interested in theatrical performances, a tour of the Palais Garnier is a must. As we know, Paris was not only a playground for the wealthy elite, but also for the poor, artists, bohemian intellectuals, and ordinary people. Montmartre was their gathering place. Originally a poor district, Montmartre was home to workers, artists, and poets. After the major reconstruction of Paris, Montmartre remained untouched because it was located on a hill. Demolishing old buildings and installing utilities were too challenging, so the area was left as it was, making housing cheaper while living costs in modernized areas increased. Today, Montmartre has modern utilities, but its architectural appearance remains historical. Some buildings are preserved from those times, allowing visitors to experience the spirit of old Paris. The area still teems with artists, just as it did 150 years ago. Montmartre was the birthplace of the first cabarets, including the famous Le Chat Noir and Moulin Rouge. This touristy and popular area is full of shops and cafes, with its central Place de Tertre being a main attraction. Another notable spot is La Maison Rose, the Pink House. It wasn't always pink or well-known. It all started when the artist Maurice Utrillo, returning home after another night of revelry, saw the house bathed in the warm pink light of the rising sun. The artist exclaimed that the house would look wonderful in pink. He and his friends painted it without the owner's permission. Since then, the house has become very popular and, as people say today, an Instagrammable place. The highlight of our Montmartre tour is the White Basilica of Sacré-Cœur. Built after a period of uprisings, it symbolizes national unity and repentance. Paul Abadie's design combines Romanesque, Byzantine, Gothic, and Renaissance architecture uniquely. If you enjoy dark history and eerie places, you'll love our next destination, the Paris catacombs. This network of underground tunnels, originally ancient quarries beneath Paris, stretches over 400 kilometers. The stone extracted from these quarries was used to build the city. Some catacomb tunnels align with the streets above, even displaying street signs corresponding to the surface roads. Occasionally, collapses occur, causing houses or even entire streets to fall into the catacombs. Today, such incidents are rare and typically harmless. Once, a Parisian fell into the catacombs through his own basement. But how did the catacombs become a burial site? Traditionally, Christians buried the dead in churchyards. By the mid-18th century, Parisian cemeteries, holding millions of bodies, became overcrowded, with burial layers reaching depths of 10 meters. One grave could contain up to 1,500 remains. These overcrowded cemeteries became sources of infection and emitted a terrible stench. In 1780, a wall separating the Cemetery of the Innocents from nearby houses on Rue de la Lingerie collapsed. Basements of adjacent houses filled with remains and filth. The cemetery was closed, and burials in Paris were prohibited. For 15 months, bones were transported nightly to be disinfected and placed in the abandoned quarries of Tombissoir, 17.5 meters deep. Eventually, 17 more cemeteries and 300 religious sites were cleared. The catacombs now house an ossuary, where bones and skulls are arranged in intricate patterns. This is the officially accessible part of the catacombs. unofficial areas, tunnels filled with bones dumped through old quarry holes can be found. Among these bones may be the remains of notable figures like Charles Perrault, author of Little Red Riding Hood, Robespierre, Nicolas Flamel, the legendary alchemist, and other prominent individuals. Modern Parisians have turned the catacombs into an underground hangout. Gatherings, concerts, and even movie nights are held in the caves. The walls are covered in graffiti, and someone even fashioned a throne from bones. Daily, urban explorers and even the police venture down to find illegal visitors. The aim is not punishment, but to prevent accidents, as those without a guide, map, or flashlight risk getting lost and never finding their way out. Now, it's time for us to return to the surface. Let's explore modern Paris and its echoes of history in a more refined setting. Speaking of sophistication and history, let me tell you why the Louvre is such a unique and popular place. First and foremost, the Louvre is a palace. It became a museum in 1793 when it first opened its doors to the public, but only part of the palace was accessible at that time. Today, the entire palace is equipped as a museum, housing 35,000 exhibits and covering an area of over 60,000 square meters. It's so vast that it would take several days just to walk through it without stopping to look at the exhibits. An entrance ticket costs 17 euros, but it is free for those under 18, individuals with limited mobility and their companions, and for everyone on the first Sunday of each month. The Louvre houses famous exhibits such as the Mona Lisa, Venus de Milo, Hammurabi's Code, and Winged Victory of Samothrace. Originally, more than 834 years ago, in 1190, the Louvre was built as a fortress to protect the city from attacks. Over time, it was transformed into a palace with a library and gardens, and eventually into the Parisian residence of kings. The area of the Louvre grew fourfold, and the palace became more luxurious. Today, the Louvre Museum is divided into 3 wings: the Richelieu wing, the Denon wing, and the Sully wing. Among the most popular exhibits are collections of ancient Egyptian, Greek, and Roman art, along with French and Italian paintings. The Richelieu wing's highlight is the Napoleon III apartments. These luxurious rooms and salons are the only original interiors that remain, with the Grand Salon being the standout feature. In the Denon wing, visit the Grand Gallery and the Italian painting department. This is the largest and most visited gallery in the museum, featuring the Mona Lisa. For a better view, visit right after opening or just before closing to avoid crowds. In the Sully wing, explore the sarcophagi room in the Egyptian Antiquities department. The Louvre's Egyptian collection is one of the largest in the world, covering all periods of ancient Egypt. If you enjoy adventure films and stories about mummies, this hall is a must-see. Overall, visiting the Louvre is an incredible aesthetic experience, allowing you to imagine yourself as a hero in a medieval fantasy or romance novel. It is no surprise that the concept of flaneur originated in Paris. Flânerie refers to strolling through boulevards to enjoy and observe urban life. Balzac describes it as gastronomy for the eyes. Share this video with someone who is also a flaneur but didn't know there was a term for it. We haven't forgotten other Parisian landmarks like Notre Dame, the Arc de Triomphe, and the Champs-Élysées, but we'll cover these in another episode. Let us know in the comments which landmark you missed in this video, or if you know of any interesting places you want to share. France's rich culture, marked by both the Holy Inquisition and remarkable achievements in science and the arts, has influenced the world through conquests and royal dynasties. Visiting Paris allows you to immerse yourself in history and feel the spirit of these aspects. If you plan to visit Paris, you probably won't see everything in one trip. so you can confidently plan to return again and again, discovering something new each time.